This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Jeff Oken came into my office one time, we were about halfway through, and said, it can't be done. We're not going to make it. We're not going to make it in time, and the special effects are just not going to work.
You're not going to finish your film in time. I have 3 model companies standing by. I can get all these sequences shot the way that you boarded them and delivered in 5 months without increasing your budget. All you have to do is fire digital productions.
So I basically just said to Jeff, go back. It's going to work. Go back and make it work. And I never want to hear you say that again.
Digital visual effects are a core part of movie making these days. Everything from the biggest superhero blockbuster to the most humble romantic comedy uses visual effects in some way. Yet this incredible innovation wasn't pioneered by a massive studio movie, but instead was first used in a scrappy low-budget B-movie, The Last Starfighter. Computer graphics had long existed in motion pictures, appearing in Westworld, Star Wars, and Tron, but The Last Starfighter was the first time CGI was used to render something which was supposed to look photoreal. The Last Starfighter was the first attempt at replicating the work traditionally done in a model shop and soundstage inside a virtual workspace. The reason for this is often incorrectly ascribed to the film's budget. Though the film did cost less than half of the most recent Star Wars, The Last Starfighter had a comparable budget to most Star Trek movies of the time. It was possible to create the film's visual effects by analog means, so why insist on digital? The reason is fittingly reflected by the film's story. It is a story about chasing a dream and reaching for the stars when everyone else says it's impossible. This is the story of The Last Starfighter. The genesis of The Last Starfighter began with screenwriter Jonathan R. Betuel. One day, while he was walking through an arcade, he saw a child playing a space game, and at the time he just so happened to be reading the King Arthur adaptation The Once and Future King, and had something of a eureka moment on the spot. He quickly devised a story where an arcade game acts as a kind of futuristic Excalibur. When teenager Alex Rogan, frustrated with his dull home life, beats the high score of the arcade game Starfighter, he is soon visited by the mysterious Centauri, an alien conman who whisks Alex away to the front lines of the Star League, an alliance of peaceful worlds to fight back against the malevolent Kodan Empire. A classic coming-of-age tale of heroism and triumph wrapped in an 80s sci-fi package. The film was quickly picked up by Lorimar Productions, with Universal handling distribution. Nick Castle was hired as director, The Last Starfighter being his second feature film. Castle had been a regular collaborator of John Carpenter's. He was one of the actors who played the original Michael Myers in Halloween, and he co-wrote Carpenter's Escape from New York. The trailer park scenes were shot on location at a real trailer park in Canyon Country, California, while the Starfighter base and cockpit scenes were filmed at MGM Studios. Centauri's star car was designed specifically for the movie by Gene Winfield, who had also designed the spinners for Blade Runner. The Last Starfighter's art and visual effects department also included production designer Ron Cobb, who later worked on Aliens, The Running Man, The Abyss, and Total Recall. Illustrator Rick Sternbach also worked on the film. He had already worked uncredited on Star Trek the Motion Picture, and would go on to contribute a plethora of designs to The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and multiple movies. Visual effects supervisor Jeffrey Oken would later work with Roland Emmerich on Stargate. Early in development, producer Gary Adelson pushed for the film to use then state-of-the-art computer graphics for the visual effects, rather than the tried-and-true motion-controlled miniatures. Adelson knew several artists at Digital Productions, a studio built around developing computer graphics technology. The studio had found steady work in commercials and corporate video, but was yet to break into feature film. Before The Last Starfighter, Digital Productions had approached George Lucas and ILM with a test scene featuring a squad of X-Wing fighters. Lucas, however, opted to stick with miniatures, as he deemed the CG test too clean-looking. Even so, people recognized the potential was there.
But I remember walking into the screening room when this test was being shown, and I just said, my God, there's no way that I could have programmed the shot. There's no way I could have gotten these maneuvers. There's no way I could have visualized this in advance to be able to see these ships flying along. And one of them, I remember, sort of does a big loop-de-loop and flies up out of camera range, comes back and flies right by the camera. I couldn't have even figured out how to pre-visualize that in order to be able to try it even in motion control. It was really neat. And I remember a number of the folks there that were looking at this were not impressed at all. It was like, oh, well, okay, that's it. And they sort of turned it off. But boy, you could see there was a future, and it just needed time and money, to take care of it, of development. A lot of people in there building hardware and software to be able to get it to a point where it was going to pay off, and it sure has.
In the 1980s, there were none of the 3D modeling tools or illustration programs that exist today. Instead, Ron Cobb would sketch his spaceship designs in blueprint form, showing each craft from multiple angles with consistent proportions. Each vertex was then digitized by the visual effects team, who essentially created wireframe models by plotting coordinates in 3D space.
Once we got all that down and we were able to instruct the computer to create these sequences of frames, there was not enough power left to let us see it until we laboriously put it on film. That was a huge blind spot, and only then could you say, oh, I got that number wrong, or it was in the wrong position, and then you go back, change the number, and you have to go through the whole process again.
This painstaking process eventually allowed the team to create basic vector animations of each scene, animated using knobs and dials to control rotation and position. To add keyframes to the animations and properly texture each spacecraft, digital productions had to code custom software during production. The Last Starfighter also included the first digital blue screen composite shots for the Gunstar cockpit scenes and the celebration scenes on Rylos. For the scene of the Gunstar landing in the trailer park at the end, a full-size landing strut was built on location. The actors, however, had only a vague idea of what they were supposed to be looking at. The team also had to create the animation for the Starfighter video game itself. Video game graphics at the time were still largely 16-bit 2D images. The closest thing to 3D graphics were simple vector-based games. At times the visual effects team weren't sure if what they promised was truly possible, but through hard work and sheer resourcefulness, the team completed a then unprecedented 27 minutes of footage. The Last Starfighter was released on the 13th of July 1984. This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the ultimate tool for creating your own beautiful website. I recently redesigned my website galaxyclasspictures.com using Squarespace's cutting-edge design tools like Blueprint AI, which helped me generate a brand new personalized template, which I then customized using Squarespace's easy-to-use Fluid engine. Squarespace also helps with your site's discoverability with their built-in SEO and domain name features. You can optimize your website so it shows up more often in searches and secure your ideal domain name. No extra fees and no add-ons required. Jump over to Squarespace using the link below to start building your website and use the coupon code Rowan J. Coleman to get 10% off your first purchase. For a film of such modest means, The Last Starfighter is a well-presented movie which wrings a lot of style out of rather mundane settings. Cinematographer King Baggett expertly uses the low sun to lend the trailer park a warm, dusty feel. Interiors also use the sunlight as motivation for strong directional lighting. However, it's the night scenes where Baggett's work excels. While not verging fully into the slick commercial aesthetic so prevalent in the decade, night exteriors make heavy use of colourful neons, warm tungsten, and flickering fire to add a lot of visual interest. It's stylish while still maintaining a naturalism which prevents the film from looking overly polished. The production design also helps with the terrestrial setting's lived-in feel. The park is full of intricate details which illustrates what life is like in this backwater. The Starfighter base is, at first glance, a clear throwback to 70s sci-fi, with its clean lines and beige uniforms. However, there are enough extra details added to make it fresh. The exposed cave walls nicely break up the cleanliness, and the halation around practical light sources adds further contrast. The Kodan interiors are especially striking with their smoky atmospheres and bold use of red. I especially love this honeycomb area which surrounds the central platform, as if the crew members have been wired directly into the ship. The Gunstar itself is an inspired design. It's comfortably up there with other iconic space fighters like the X-Wing, Viper, or Star Fury. By taking inspiration from attack helicopters rather than fighter jets, the Gunstar is made distinct compared to these other famous spacecraft. The design strikes the perfect balance between looking functional and cool. The gyro-stabilized cockpit is also a great idea, which adds some extra dynamism to the action. The visual effects are dated, but they hold up surprisingly well in some areas. The Gunstar is highly detailed for the time, and in some shots the Star Car looks almost as good as the flying DeLorean from Back to the Future. The environments and effects are where the CGI has dated the most. The rock textures tend to blur into mush, and the thruster plumes are too static. A handful of shots, though, take full advantage of their medium, crafting elaborate long takes with vast changes of scale, which are almost impossible to achieve with analog visual effects techniques. I wish the space scenes had leaned more into these kinds of shots, to really show off what computer graphics are capable of. Ultimately, the visual effects, despite their age, gets the job done, and their dated look inadvertently adds to the film's charm. The score, though, is easily the strongest element of the presentation. Craig Saffin's main theme is immediately memorable, but also incredibly versatile. It's effortlessly woven into scenes of young love, yearning aspiration, and bombastic action, and it feels completely appropriate in every instance. It's just as much of an earworm as the many great themes the likes of Alan Silvestri, James Horner, and Jerry Goldsmith produced in the 80s. Lance Guest plays Alex Rogan, the aspirational handyman who dreams of someday leaving his backwater home for something bigger. Guest strikes a good balance between teen angst and leading man charisma. He's awkward and juvenile, but he's also totally believable as a heroic space hero. The film also gives him a further opportunity to show his range in his dual role as Beta. Guest succeeds in distinguishing both parts with unique mannerisms and handles the comedy very well. Catherine Mary Stewart plays Alex's girlfriend Maggie Gordon. Stewart is spot-on casting as the girl next door type, and she has great chemistry with Guest. On balance, the character is somewhat underwritten, but Stewart is very likeable in the part, and demonstrated her own acting range in other cult 80s hits like Night of the Comet. As good as both leads are, it's Robert Preston as Centauri who steals the show. Last Starfighter was Preston's final film before his death, the end of a career which began in the late 1930s. Preston gives a truly remarkable performance in the film. His fast-talking speaking style and committed physical acting give weight to dialogue which would sound utterly ridiculous coming from any other actor.
You may have thought it was a game, but it was also a test. Aha!
The sheer confidence of his performance allows him to veer effortlessly between absurd comedy to compelling drama and everything in between. His character is the real heart of the movie. Beneath his odd persona, he's just as much of a dreamer as Rogan, but with greater conviction.
Listen, Centauri, I'm not any of those guys. I'm a kid from a trailer park.
If that's what you think, then that's all you'll ever be.
When Alex agrees to become a starfighter, he is trained by Grig, played by Dan O'Herlihy, perhaps best known to 80s sci-fi fans as the Old Man from RoboCop. But buried beneath all that alien makeup, O'Herlihy puts in a lovable performance. Rather than a grizzled soldier, Grig is endlessly optimistic and delightfully friendly.
One ship, you, me, and that's it?
Exactly. Surprise attack.
It'll be a slaughter!
That's the spirit.
No, my slaughter!
Even when Alex has his doubts, Grig never scolds or strong-arms him. Instead, he acts as a supportive friend throughout. His adorable laugh never fails to make me smile. Star Trek fans may recognize Meg Wiley, who plays Granny. 20 years earlier, she played the Keeper in the original series episode The Cage. Star Trek fans should also watch out for Blink and You'll Miss It appearances from Deep Space Nine's Mark Alimo and TNG's Will Wheaton. Nick Castle does a solid job directing the film, composing rich widescreen images full of elaborate blocking. The film's opening scene is a great showcase of his talents. In this long take, our eye is effortlessly guided from one thing to the next. We start on Elvira at her trailer window, then follow this man as he guides the camera to these running children. The camera tracks right while following the kids, where Maggie inherits the camera. As she says hi to Mr. Boone, the viewer's eye briefly switches to him, but the running kids reappear in the background to guide the camera back to Maggie. As she passes Granny, the camera finally leaves Maggie and we cut to a single on Granny. A common trick Castle uses throughout the film is to start a shot focused on one particular detail and then pull out, revealing the space and characters. The most common shot throughout the film is still the single, but in many scenes Castle opts for ensemble staging. This is clean, elegant, classical filmmaking, and Castle does it beautifully. Jonathan R. Betuel's screenplay is well structured, creative, and infused with character-driven action. It follows the familiar beats of the hero's journey while layering on its own unique personality. The opening act is one of those well-oiled, hyper-efficient machines. Alex is introduced playing Starfighter before he rushes off to check the mail for news about his student loan, and talks to his friends about his ambitions.
You guys think I'm gonna hang out here, watch you shine your pickup, go to the drive-in, get drunk and throw up every Saturday night? Forget it, man. I'm doing something with my life.
In under 10 pages, almost all major characters are introduced, the main theme is established, and a crucial plot point is set up. The dullness of trailer park life is conveyed through action and dialogue. The complaints of the residents, Otis and Alex scrambling around making repairs and so on. Alex mouthing along to an overheard conversation is particularly creative, funny, and clever. It does the work to make you believe life here is so boring that the whole trailer park would get excited enough to come out and see Alex reach the high score on an arcade game. It's one of those no small parts movies. Supporting cast members, even those with only a handful of lines, are given little quirks to make them fun and memorable. Alex's bickering with his younger brother Lewis is a real highlight.
What's up, Alex?
Back to sleep, Lewis, or I'm telling Mom about your Playboys.
The screenplay is held back from true greatness by two main problems. Firstly, the refusal of the call section goes on a little too long. Alex understandably doesn't jump at the chance to fight in a real interstellar war, but even after he goes back to protect his family, he hesitates at every turn. The overall effect makes Alex come across as a little whiny in places. Secondly, the outer space conflict is too generic. It lacks an emotional heft to underpin the spectacle, and its details are conveyed through a rather on-the-nose exposition dump. The Beta Unit plotline, which was greatly expanded in reshoots, helps combat this generic feeling. The humour in these scenes, coupled with Centauri's eccentricity and delightfully pulpy alien names like the Zandozan, lend the film a more unique personality. Despite these issues, The Last Starfighter is still a well-told story with lots of heart. The movie is simply charming as hell. Even for its detractors, it's impossible to hate this movie. Its earnest tone and life-affirming message make The Last Starfighter a wonderful watch. A joyous little sci-fi gem that leaves us gazing up at the stars with wonder. Having said all that, we're still left with a question. Why did this movie opt for computer graphics instead of traditional visual effects? The deceptively simple answer seems to be, to prove it was possible. The whole CGI versus practical effects debate is something which mostly exists in the minds of audiences, and is not something actual filmmakers concern themselves with. CGI didn't catch on because it was the easier or cheaper option. It caught on because of its incredible power as a creative tool. Analog visual effects had essentially already peaked in the 1980s. After the invention of the motion-controlled camera, venturing into digital visual effects was simply the next logical step. Creating without the limitations of physical production frees the imagination, and has allowed filmmakers to push the boundaries of possibility for decades. It led to landmark productions like Babylon 5, The Matrix, the Star Wars prequels, and Avatar, and is now woven into every piece of visual media you see, whether you notice it or not. Digital visual effects are a gateway to pure creativity. It allows people to turn a grey block into an entire storytelling world. Just as The Last Starfighter tells us, anything is possible as long as we dream it. In the 2010s, thanks to rapidly advancing digital visual effects, an independent film revolution was seemingly right around the corner, but it never happened. To find out why, check out the latest article from my monthly newsletter On Screen by following the link below. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel to stay up to date on future uploads. You can see videos early, uncut and ad-free by joining me on Patreon. I'd like to thank all of my current patrons and members, with an ultra thanks to Evan, Eamon Kelly, Michael Hardy, County Ark, Mike Halsey, Olivia Computer, Bano, Tom, Director Kate, Patrick Fleming, Matthew Camille, Lilac Yane, Ed Mark Starr, Extreme Streamers, Howard Craig Kervik, and AS Caging 101. Thank you once again for watching. Have a good one.